welcome to Global Hedonism. Today we're going to talk about that paper that came out about coffee in the journal Matter. There's going to be 2 videos for this one because we're officially launching our Patreon campaign. You can check it out in the description down below, and in the Patreon we're going to have a more scientific, more in-depth explanation of the paper. So about this paper, I know there's a couple of videos around about this subject. James Hoffman also did a video on this extraction, but I did something different. And for one is I wanted to try it for a longer time. So I think it's not really a valid experiment if you just make like one espresso and you taste it. I think the big question is this the espresso I want to drink every day? So now we're going to how I did the adjustment. See you back in a minute. And so I'm standing here next to my setup. I will show you how I have set up right now. So it's 20 grams coffee, 40 grams espresso, pull time around 30 seconds, the usual espresso. But this paper came out and they are suggesting completely different settings. The reason why they're suggesting the different settings are the most important graph in this paper is this one, which shows the size distribution of the coffee. I think this is the strongest point of this paper, the most important graph to understand why they see the extraction yields that they see, but it also is the weakest point of this paper because the size distribution depends on the specific grinder you're using. And so they used this grinder, and I'm going to use conical burrs grinder from Becerra. So all of this gear is mine. None of this was sponsored. That's also very important. So I'm gonna go through it. I'm gonna change the settings. I'm gonna show some of it to you. I'm not gonna show everything because it's gonna be a long process. But the most important thing is the information in this paper relevant to me? Can I use it for my espresso before it goes out into the industry and the industry starts changing? That's going to be a very long process if it happens, because the industry is even more conservative. They're trying to deliver consistent results, and few of the big coffee houses are going to go changing things immediately. They did the experiment in Portland, Oregon, and maybe this coffee house changes it, maybe some other coffee houses adapt it. What I want to see is if for the home barista it has any influence or not, and for that it's very important to see how it translates to different coffee grinders and different coffee brewers. I think the coffee machine, the espresso machine, is not going to be as important as the coffee grinder as usual in espresso. I will do some shots with the GoPro also of how things go, and then talk about the end results. So this is the coffee machine. Becerra Makita. I have disassembled it. As you can see, doing this will void your warranty, so just beware of that. And right now I have a blind sip. If we start brewing, you're gonna see it goes all the way up to over 11. We need to get that down to 6, and if I'm right, this should be the place to do it. So we're gonna try that. I'm still not sure if I'm gonna regret this, but we'll see. Okay, now we got it to where we wanted it to be. Check it out. Let's put on number 6. Let's see how it goes. So now on the first one, I don't want to spend forever trying to adjust the grinder settings, so I just adjust the dosage afterwards. As you saw, it was way too much at the beginning. So now let's try to brew the espresso. that was a bit too long, so we're gonna have to do a little adjustment on the grinder settings for sure. Let's clean the scale. And now it's another thing we want to look at. So this is how the puck looks like afterwards. Also, you know, any good barista will know, like, one of the quality signs of a well-pulled espresso is how easy it is to clean the puck. And for sure, this is what we would expect from this type of extraction conditions. This is a 17 gram sieve, so it shouldn't be so much difference between 15 and 17, but of course there's a difference. For all of you worried about the crema, it's a beautiful. So I don't want to bore you with every time I weigh the beans, but I'm keeping to the parameters of the experiment. So any shot that's more or less than 1 gram within the desired range, I'm pulling it again. I'm redrawing it, re-weighting it. I have to be within 14.5, 15.5 grams, trying to keep within that range. Because if it's less, it's hard to correct. If it's more, it's easier. So let's pull a second shot. And here we go. That was again too fast. So that's it. We've got everything set up with the new method. So first conclusions, does it taste different? Yes, it does. Is it tasty? It is also tasty. It is a bit more watery. James Hoffman has done a video on it, and yeah, that's one of the points that he made. But as you know, if you watch our video on how to find your favorite wine, you know weather, temperature, humidity, and what you've tasted before is going to have an effect on how you taste things. And particularly today, we had already had the normal espresso before I started making the adjustments, and I tasted some of the shots in between. So of course my palate is a bit saturated with coffee taste. I notice more the acidity, the fruitiness. So we're gonna let it run for a week, and we're gonna come back to the conclusions. I'm gonna come back to you with the conclusions after 1 week. I want to talk about one very important factor about the espresso, which is gonna affect how it tastes a lot, and it is the beans. And I'm using beans from a particular roastery in Hamburg, Quixote Café. The name is Quich Ota. You can go look at the roasting profiles there. So this is a medium to light roast, third wave, single origin coffee beans. For sure, this is going to have more accentuated fruitiness and acidity, and it's going to be affected differently by the new method. Now, you've seen how the adjustment can be made on my particular setup. Maybe for your setup it's a bit different, maybe it's easier, maybe it's more complicated, but it's an adjustment that can be made. But the conclusions. So I didn't like it as much. It was a bit watery for one, but it didn't really disturb me. What disturbed me is it had this kind of under-extracted, over-extracted thing at the same time. Kind of when you pull an espresso and you have channeling. I also want to address another thing of the paper. It's about reducing espresso consumption. And okay, so for a coffee house, it's a big issue. For me, also, I pull about 1,000 espressos per year. Going to 20 grams, it's about 20 kilos of espresso of coffee beans a year. So if I reduce it to 15, of course, it's going to be 5 kilograms of coffee, which is not so little money. So maybe it's a valuable contribution, but I just don't think the taste of the shots was worthy. So understanding the paper is very important. And while you're grinding the beans, you get the 250 micrometer size distribution, which are striving. You get a size distribution, but you also get some fines which are formed by the grinding process. And the amount of fines very much depends on the type of grinder that you have. So it's different for a conical bore against a disc bore. It's different for the type of beans that you're doing. There's a paper on how even the temperature of the beans affects the size distribution that is produced for a same grinder. If you want to check the diagrams with me and have an explanation of what interpretation the diagram gets and what it means for extraction and for the conclusions of the paper, check out our Patreon campaign, and there I will go into depth about each of the diagrams. But here's the TLDR. There is two distributions. There's a certain amount of smaller particles and a certain amount of particles with the desired distribution, size distribution. And this amount of smaller particles, they have more area per unit of volume, so they tend to be overrepresented during extraction. So while the amount of fines can be reduced by grinding coarser for any coffee grinder, there is also a certain amount of fines which will be produced, and the certain amount of fines finally also depends on the grinder. So maybe for the grinder which they were using, they found the sweet spot where the amount of fines was reduced enough that you had a very good extraction point at this coarseness with 15-second extraction, while for my grinder, which is a Becerra BB05 with conical burrs, you get maybe more fines at this size distribution. And since there's still a percentage of fines and they are still overrepresented in the espresso extraction, then you also get less courses and they're even further underrepresented, which is why I assume that I got this very weird over-extracted, under-extracted kind of espresso. It wasn't undrinkable. I've had worse espressos for sure, but it wasn't enjoyable. One thing I did take away from the paper was when I changed the settings of my espresso machine, and you just saw it, I set it back to 9 bar instead of setting it to the 11 to 12 bar, which is what's showing in the dial. And the resultant espresso, after doing the experiment, after going to the coarser grind, shorter shots with less coffee, and returning back to the 20 gram 30-second standard espresso, I got better results because I reduced the pressure. So the one takeaway is maybe you can try go coarser, pull your espressos a bit shorter. You can also try to reduce the pressure a little bit on your machine. My suggestion would be, maybe if you're really interested as a home barista, try it for yourself. Maybe it turns out it's a particular taste which you like. Maybe you can achieve what they were aiming for, that you can do like more goal-oriented extraction of the espresso, that you can fine-tune your espresso better. I think it's gonna be difficult because there are too many variables in the whole extraction, and while it might work for the specific grinder which they use, it might not work for your grinder. The other thing, the other very important takeaway from this paper is don't save money on the grinder. So if you have a bad grinder and you get a lot of fines, you're gonna get very bad extraction, you're gonna get a lot of air extracted, and this very little proportion of fines is gonna be overrepresented in your extraction. That's the takeaway. That's very important. So I hope you like the video. If you want to learn more, go check out our Patreon. There's also our merch store, so make sure to follow that. And follow us on Instagram, and we'll see you on the next one.